Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. Ours is the first caucus in Virginia history that has more women than men, so we've got an awful lot of women's history to share this month. But as Delegate Munn King reminded us, there's still plenty of Black history to share, too. So I rise today to share a little bit of hidden Black and women's history from Charlottesville. It's a story our town has been hiding for a very long time. This story also takes us back to World War II, at a time when Charlottesville was facing an eerily familiar problem. The hospital was having a hard time hanging on to staff. Many Virginians were serving overseas, and many more, like the Black Rosies, had gone off to the big cities to work in the booming wartime industries. So the workforce ranks in our little town were growing thin. But as we're seeing all around us right now, one man's labor shortage is a woman's chance to change how we value people's work. At the time, Mr. Speaker, the workers with the lowest pay and the longest hours were the hospital's ward maids, a post held exclusively by Black women who changed the linens and cleaned the rooms, and they made less than $7 a week. And even at that time, it just wasn't cutting it. In 1941, the hospital superintendent sounded the alarm in a report to UVA President Newcomb. He wrote, "While it does not appear to be generally known, a great many of the colored population have gone to the larger centers, attracted by much higher wages paid in munition factories." But rather than offer competitive pay to keep these essential workers, the university made empty promises. For 2 years, UVA swore to those ward maids that it would lobby this General Assembly for a wage increase. But after 2 years, when those wages didn't come, the women took matters into their own hands. In January 1943, 28 Black women walked off the job from UVA Hospital. They sent UVA President Newcomb a detailed memo outlining their calculations for a living wage of $9.30 a week and requesting a meeting. But President Newcomb cowardly refused to meet them together. Instead, he recruited wealthier white women from the Red Cross to volunteer in the hospital, while he spent the next 3 months working to divide and conquer the ward maids who's left. By May, he had convinced most of them to come back for around $9 an hour, but still short of the living wage they demanded, and that is when those women learned to stick together. The next spring, they joined forces with the Black male orderlies and threatened another walkout unless the hospital reduced their workday from 12 hours to 8. And by then, UVA had learned their lesson too. That spring, it only took the university 4 days to lobby the Virginia State Budget Director for an 8-hour work rule. Funny how things in this town can get done plenty fast when the right someone really asks. And that's when they made it official and founded Local 550 Union of the State, County, and Municipal Workers of America. And Local 550 secured extraordinary gains. Their work week went from 72 hours to 48. Their salaries doubled, their sick leave doubled. They got overtime, 13 paid holidays, and they paved the way for the first training program for Black licensed nurses in Virginia. When Labor Day rolls back around and some of us say, "Thank a union," this is why. Now, Mr. Speaker, I wish I could say that that was the end of the story. I wish I could say that that union were still thriving today, that workers at Virginia's top hospital still have a meaningful voice on the job. How different the last 2 years might have been if they did. But this is Virginia, and so we know what happens next. Every major chapter in our history that has been marked by Black gains has been met by white backlash. And in this case, Mr. Speaker, the clapback came straight from this body. In 1946, the General Assembly banned state offices and agencies from recognizing public employee unions, a ban that still stands to this day, one of just 3, I believe, in the nation. Now, Mr. Speaker, we've heard a lot this session about how collective bargaining infringes on freedom, how it impedes individuals from negotiating directly with their boss. And every time I hear that, I can't help but think how unmoored that logic is from history. I have to stifle the urge to ask, don't you think they tried that? Don't you know they came to collective organizing out of necessity? We all want to be judged by our own skills and talents, by the content of our character, but experience has long since shown us that some people have to work twice as hard just to be seen for half of what they're worth. And when that happens, we get together. We work together because we're stronger together. It's so much harder to ignore any one of us that way. Now, Mr. Speaker, if you haven't heard this story before, that's because UVA has been hiding it for a very long time. The university first published this story in its full form just 1 year ago, in March of 2021. It's one of the many important stories in Charlottesville and UVA history that has been surfaced as part of the President's Commission on the University in the Age of Segregation. It was established to find and tell stories exactly like this one. This one was published with a preference that said, even an institution as historic as the University of Virginia has stories yet to be told. And I think any of us looking around in this era can tell just how much history we've finally been telling in the last 2, 3, 4 years, how much we've changed, how much we tell, and how well we tell it. We've been experiencing extraordinary gains in how we tell Black history in Virginia, and because this is Virginia, we know what happens next. Every chapter in our history marked by Black gains has been met by white backlash. And all session long, we have been writing that chapter in our history right now. So in this March, in this new month of women's history, I hope that all of the women in this body will recognize the opportunity we have to write that next chapter. Because, Mr. Speaker, women's history is not just the story of the boundary breakers, of the women who shatter glass ceilings. It is also the story of the women who would hold them back. And so we have a choice. We can be like the women from the Red Cross who would give cover to the men who divide and conquer. Or we can stand with all of our neighbors and ensure that no one is ignored. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.